In the annals of American crime, there are names that resonate with an unsettling familiarity, invoking both fear and fascination. Albert DeSalvo, infamously known as the Boston Strangler, is one such figure, a man whose name became synonymous with terror in the 1960s. His story is a dark and complex tapestry of violence, psychological torment, and a society grappling with the notion of evil in human form. Join us as we unravel the chilling story of Albert DeSalvo, the man infamously known as the Boston Strangler. Our story begins in the unassuming town of Chelsea, Massachusetts, where Albert DeSalvo was born on September 3, 1931. The son of a violent alcoholic father, DeSalvo's early life was marred by brutality and neglect. His childhood home was a crucible of violence, with his father frequently beating his mother and siblings. It was a chaotic and abusive environment that would leave an indelible mark on young Albert. By the time he was a teenager, DeSalvo had begun to show troubling signs of delinquency, including petty theft and a disturbing habit of animal cruelty. Despite his troubled upbringing, DeSalvo enlisted in the U.S. Army as a young man, seeking structure and purpose. For a time, he appeared to thrive, even marrying and starting a family. But beneath the surface, darker impulses simmered. His military career was cut short by a dishonorable discharge, and he returned to Massachusetts, drifting through a series of unremarkable jobs. It was during this period that DeSalvo's deviant behavior escalated into a pattern of sexual assault and burglary, foreshadowing the horrors yet to come. The terror began in earnest in the summer of 1962, when a series of gruesome murders rocked the city of Boston. The victims, mostly older women, were found strangled in their homes, often with their own stockings. The killer left behind few clues, but the methodical nature of the crime suggested a deeply disturbed individual. Dubbed the Boston Strangler by the press, the assailant appeared to gain the trust of his victims, gaining entry into their homes without signs of forced entry. Panic swept through Boston as the body count rose. Women took precautions, installing new locks and refusing to open their doors to strangers. The city, gripped by fear, demanded answers, but the police were stymied. The killings seemed to defy patterns, and the killer's ability to evade capture only added to his infamy. For nearly 2 years, the Strangler terrorized Boston, claiming 13 victims in total. Albert DeSalvo entered the picture in 1964, but not as a murder suspect. He was arrested for a series of sexual assaults in what became known as the Green Man crimes, so named because he wore green work clothes during the attacks. While in custody, DeSalvo confessed to being the Boston Strangler, recounting details of the murders that only the killer could know, or so it seemed. DeSalvo's confession sent shockwaves through law enforcement and the public alike. Here was a man who, on the surface, seemed unremarkable, ordinary even, yet capable of unspeakable violence. But there were inconsistencies in his story. Some details didn't align perfectly with the evidence, and DeSalvo's confession came without physical proof linking him to the crime scenes. Nevertheless, he was convicted, not for the murders, but for his role in the Green Man assaults. DeSalvo's life behind bars was as tumultuous as his life outside. In 1967, he escaped from a psychiatric hospital, prompting a massive manhunt before he was recaptured. His behavior remained erratic, oscillating between displays of remorse and boasts about his crimes. In 1973, DeSalvo was found stabbed to death in his prison cell under mysterious circumstances. Officially, it was ruled as a result of a prison dispute, but rumors of a conspiracy to silence him persisted. For decades, questions lingered about whether DeSalvo was truly the Boston Strangler. Critics pointed to the lack of concrete evidence tying him to the murders and suggested that his confession could have been a fabrication, a desperate bid for notoriety, or a coerced admission. Others argued that the murders may have been the work of multiple individuals, exploiting the panic to cover their tracks. In 2013, advancements in forensic technology provided a breakthrough. DNA evidence from one of the crime scenes matched DeSalvo's DNA, obtained from a discarded water bottle used by his nephew. This link provided the first definitive proof connecting DeSalvo to at least one of the Strangler's victims, reigniting debates about his role in the other murders. While the findings confirmed his involvement in a single case, they did not conclusively solve the mystery of the Boston Strangler as a whole. The legacy of Albert DeSalvo is one of profound unease. His life and crimes reflect the complexity of human nature, a blend of vulnerability, trauma, and malevolence. For the victims and their families, his name evokes an enduring grief, a reminder of lives cut short and justice left incomplete. For the broader public, he remains a figure of macabre fascination, a case study in the psychology of a killer and the failures of a society to protect its most vulnerable. But perhaps the most haunting aspect of the Boston Strangler story lies not in the identity of the killer, but in the unanswered questions that remain. Did Albert DeSalvo act alone, or was he merely a convenient scapegoat in a city desperate for closure? And what drives a man to commit such heinous acts? Nature, nurture, or an unknowable darkness within? The tale of Albert DeSalvo and the Boston Strangler serves as a grim reminder of the fragility of human life and the enduring quest for justice. It is a story that compels us to confront the darkest corners of the human psyche, to seek understanding amidst the horror, and to remember the victims whose lives were stolen in the shadow of fear. Their stories, like the case itself, remain etched in the collective memory of a city forever changed. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution.